Good morning, guys. I thought I'd give you a little peek at what a morning looks like on our farm outside because it's so beautiful in the mornings. And then I have a couple of things on my to-do list. I have a mulberry tree that I need to plant that I'm really excited about. And then I want to share my flan recipe with you guys. Look how gorgeous my Lady Banks is right now. Mine gets the huge blooms. I've never seen them this big, and the first year I had them, they were nowhere near that big. They were all just like really tiny ones, but they're so pretty. So I planted this one here, and then I planted that one over there, right at our entrance. Here is the mulberry tree that I'll be planting. I picked this up at Lowe's for $10, which I thought was a great deal. And this is a black mulberry tree. It gets up to about 30 feet tall. And the berries are super sweet. They're way better than blackberries in my opinion. And this is an everbearing, so you might get berries from this tree twice a year or so. These like to be planted in full sun, so you're going to want to make sure you do that in order to get lots of fruit from this tree. If you plant it in the shade, it will not bear fruit, or it'll bear very little fruit. So get this in a full sun spot. There's 3 colors of mulberry trees. There's the black, the red, and the white. I have the black, which is supposed to be the better of the 3 flavor-wise, but it's also the smaller of the 3, only getting to about 30 feet tall and 30 feet wide. These trees tend to have a really short trunk, making it look like it's a multi-trunk tree, which I really love that look, so I'm happy about that. You're going to want to make sure you dig your hole twice as big as the root ball of the plant. And if the root ball is really root bound, you're going to want to loosen that up. This one is really not too bad, as you can see here. So I'm not even going to loosen it up. I'm just going to plop it in. And I made sure to take my shovel and kind of stab at the sides of the hole that I dug just to loosen up the soil even more so this can really root in, because this area of the yard has a teeny bit more clay in the soil, but it's still really easy to dig into, so I think it'll be fine in this spot. But I just know that I'm not going to be planting anything around this tree in this area, so it should get plenty of sun all the time. I like to make sure that the soil is packed nice and tight around the tree so that there's no air pockets. Now, since my husband likes to mow over a lot of my trees and plants, like my fig tree, I'm going to put a cage over this tree to make sure that that doesn't happen. And this is just one of my DIY tomato cages that I did in a video previously. If you want to check that out, I'll post a link in the bio. But it's just made out of some fencing, and they work so well. They're so sturdy. I also plan to keep this on here year-round, at least for the first year, and if I need to put some plastic over this in the wintertime, I will, and I'll use that cage as a support for the plastic. Here are some pictures of what the tree looks like and what the berries look like, and sometimes the berries can be really long berries too, which is really cool. I got some late night canning done, and I canned a bunch of strawberries for the pantry, and this is strawberry jam, so I made about 8 jars, and I'll probably make some more because I have twice as many strawberries left. Okay, so I'm gonna make some Spanish flan, and I love flan. It's one of my favorite desserts, thanks to my mom because it's her favorite dessert, and she loves custard pie too. And instead of ramekins, I'm gonna be using these curd jars, and they're just the little fat or flat jelly jars. They work perfect for making flan, and then you could store them away in the refrigerator afterwards because flan will last in the refrigerator for about 5 days. So you can see these jars are just perfect. They're the perfect size for one personal size flan, and then I just stick my lids in my drawer so that I could use the jars for canning later. These will need to go into a water bath in the oven, so I've got them in this glass platter that I'm going to use as my water bath pan. I hope you guys try out my flan recipe. Here is the list of ingredients in case you'd like to screenshot them. All right, we're going to start off with 1 1/3 cup of heavy whipping cream. And then you're going to need 1 cup of whole milk. Make sure it's whole milk. It can't be low fat or 2%. Then you're also going to need a teaspoon of real vanilla extract. Don't use imitation vanilla. It won't come out as great. And then you're going to need just a pinch of salt. You're going to turn your stovetop on to medium to low heat just in the beginning here and stir this enough to make sure it comes together, and then you'll turn the heat up until you bring this to a simmer. I like to continually stir my milk until it starts to simmer. That way I don't get scalded milk on the bottom of my pan. As soon as it starts to simmer and you notice it starting to coat your spoon, you want to take it off the heat and set it aside for 30 minutes. It's okay to leave it simmering for a few seconds. It's not a big deal. Just make sure you're not scalding the milk or burning the milk in the pan. And you can transfer this cream and milk into a bowl to cool so that you can use the same pan for your sugar. So now you're gonna need 1 cup of sugar and 1/3 cup of water, and this is gonna be for your caramel. Pour the water and sugar into a cool pan, and then you're gonna turn the heat up to a low heat until the sugar has dissolved. And make sure that you're stirring this continually. Once the sugar is all dissolved, you're gonna turn the heat up gradually until you start to see bubbles forming at the bottom. Once you see the bubbles start coming up, you're going to stop stirring and you're going to let it sit until the mixture becomes an amber color, kind of the same color as honey. I recommend taking a clean wet rag or a wet pastry brush and wiping down the sides of your pan in case any sugar has splashed up onto the sides of the pan. Once it's turned that amber color, you're going to pour these into your ramekins or your jars. Now, my sugar could have gotten a lot darker than this, and that's pretty typical with flan, but I actually like mine a little bit lighter because I don't really like the taste of burnt sugar, and the darker it gets, the more it tastes like burnt sugar. You're going to fill these up about 1/4 of an inch at the bottom. If you're a little more than that or a little less than that, it's not a big deal. If you're not planning on eating these out of the jar, you'll want to turn your jars to coat the sides with your caramel. I'm going to be eating mine out of the jar, so I'm not going to worry about that step. Now we're going to take 6 large eggs. 3 of them you're going to put in a bowl whole, and 3 of them just the yolks. I'm using eggs from my own farm, but if you could find farm fresh eggs, I highly recommend using them because the yolks taste so much better in farm fresh eggs. However, this flan is still going to taste great with store-bought eggs. If you're having trouble separating your yolks from your eggs, you can use a strainer for this part, and that would work just fine. Now I've got this footage sped up a little bit, but you're going to want to stir this slowly with a whisk. You don't want to whisk air into your eggs. So it looks like I'm going fast, but again, I've just sped up this clip, but I am going really slowly to ensure that I'm not getting a bunch of bubbles into my mixture. Now you're going to add 7 tablespoons of sugar to your mixture. You can add less than that. You can go as low as 5 tablespoons if you're trying to limit your sugar intake, but I find that this is a great amount for me. Again, we're going to whisk this in gently. It looks like I'm whisking really fast, but again, I still have this clip sped up. If you notice the albumin in your egg is really thick and jelly-like, don't worry about it. It'll mix in a minute. Now we're going to add our cream mixture in slowly with the eggs, whisking it gently the entire time, and you'll notice that my cream, because I didn't cover it, it has a skin on the top. Don't worry, you could pour that right in or you could remove it from the top. We're going to pour this through a wire strainer in a little bit anyway. At this point, because you're thinning this mixture quite a bit, you can whisk a little bit faster because it's going to hold less air now. Now I'm just removing some of that skin on the top, but you can see I left plenty of it in there still, and it's not going to be a problem. All right, once you've got that cream mixture all in there, you're going to continue whisking this until it's very well combined. Now I'm going to pour this into a large measuring bowl, and I'm going to use a wire strainer. And this is going to get rid of any chunks that might be in my mixture from the albumin or from that skin that was left on the top of the cream. This is a really important step because this is going to ensure that your flan is very smooth and custardy. Now go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and make sure that your rack is in the middle setting. And when you pour these in, I just like to go through and pour a little bit in each one just to make sure that I'm filling them up to the same level. So I'll go back and fill in the ones that are a little bit short. Because I'm trying to make these small portions of flan because they are high in fat and sugar, I used 6 jars, but this recipe is better suited for 5 jars if you want to fill the jars to the rim almost. Now we're going to fill our water bath, and you want to make sure that you fill this up to at least halfway to the level of the flan. I just really fill the bottom pan as far up as I can go, maybe about a ½ inch below the top rim of the pan. The water bath is really, really important for flan because it distributes the heat evenly and it keeps the custard really, really smooth and creamy. So once you've poured the mixture in, you're going to look for any air bubbles, and I have a special trick. To get the air bubbles out, if there are some small air bubbles, I just take a butter knife and a rag and I just push the bubbles down with the knife, and somehow magically the bubbles stick to the back side of the knife. And then I just wipe the knife clean and I do it again to any of the other jars if they need them. All right, your flan is ready for the oven. You're going to put this in at about 35 to 40 minutes. You can go a little longer or take it out a little sooner, and you can test this towards the 35-40 minute mark by sticking a butter knife down in the center of one of your flan. And if it comes out clean, then it's all ready. After taking this out of the oven, you want this to cool at room temperature for 2 hours, and then you can refrigerate them up to 5 days. Now, there's only really one way to tell if your flan is really good, and that is if it's bubble-free, it's rich and creamy, and it's gone as soon as it's cooled. I really hope you guys like my flan recipe. I've worked on this recipe for quite a while to get it just how I like, but I understand some people might not like flan the way that I do, which is not too sweet, super smooth, and light tasting. If you like your flan sweeter and a little more dense, let me know in the comments and I will modify my recipe so you can get that outcome. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.